Hello, good morning. This thing actually started with the first push of the button. It sort of almost caught me off guard. I was ready to go repeatedly over and over and over to get it to work, and it just sort of popped right up here. Wait a minute. Huh. I'm looking here, but I'm looking at myself over here. So isn't this exciting? Watch this. Let's see if this works here. Yeah, okay. See, there, I'm there. Somebody else is there with me, but I don't know who it is yet. It's Joe. Hi, Joe. I was going to say bright and early. Hi, Ray and Nellie. So here we are. This thing actually worked. We still have not solved our internet connection problem, but we have a temporary fix, and so that's about all we can hope for. Oddly, this thing is streaming. There's Raj. Hi Raj. I'm seeing double. Hello, Matias. Oddly, this thing is streaming through the phone, but will not stream through the iPad. And so, anyway, I'm very early. Yes, you are kind of early today, Joe. You're usually sort of right on time, about 30 minutes late. Hello, Janan. And so, the thing that we're going to talk about today is Kaivalya. Kaivalya. Maybe somebody will type it into the box so everybody can see it. Kaivalya. Kaivalya is one of those, I want to say this, but I'm reluctant to say it because I can say it so many times over so many different words, and each time it's still a true statement. Kaivalya is one of my favorite words. At least today. There, thank you, Raj. Raj typed it in the box. Kaivalya is one of my favorite words. But then, when it's another day, Sushumna is my favorite word. But there's a lot. Today is Kaivalya. Do you like Kaivalya?
I like it.
When's mango your favorite?
Mango is my favorite word when the mango delivery man shows up with mangoes. We're still waiting. We had a mango delivery service set up for, what?
3 weeks from now.
For Friday, and it didn't happen. Huh? Tuesday. I'm just going to go over to the grocery store. It's only a 10-15 minute walk away, and go mango shopping. But anyway, the mango of the day is Kaivalya. What is Kaivalya? Kaivalya is actually, one of the ways of saying it is Moshe is my favorite worth. You speak a different language, Nellie, or you can't type. And so in terms of yoga, as codified by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, the goal of yoga is Kaivalya, which gets translated as liberation. And what does that mean, liberation? Freedom. It means freedom. Here's a way of saying it. Patanjali defines yoga as yogesh chitta vritti nirodha. Nirodha means approximately setting aside. So when you set aside all your false identities of attractions, aversions, and fears, etc., ultimately, what is attained? Liberation or freedom or Kaivalya, freedom from all of those attachments, aversions, and fear. What's the method that we employ to do that? This is the word nirodha. We learn to do this setting aside process. we learn to do this setting aside process, and that process is called Nirodha. And the final outcome of that is called liberation, or Kaivalya. Now this is just an opinion, not everybody would agree with me, but this is what we are actually attempting to do. I maintain that we all should give ourselves more credit for doing practices, for walking into a room and sitting on our butt on a cushion. We should give ourselves more credit for what we are doing than often is the case, because I often have met many people that say, basically in nicer words or sometimes more cruel words, I'm a failure at meditation, I just can't do it. Well, when you walk to your cushion, you walk in the room and you sit your butt down on your cushion, or on your chair, what are you doing? What is your intent behind doing it? Is it not true that your intent in doing that is to be free from all the activities of the mind? And so what in effect we're saying in doing that, just with our intent, is we are automatically seeking that freedom. We are seeking that freedom from all of the mental noise, all of our attachments, all the problems in our communities, all the problems of the world. We are attempting to seek freedom from that. Are we not, Ma? To be free. We're trying to be free. And that freedom is the meaning behind Kaivalya. So even if we have the slightest taste of a quiet meditation, does it mean that we have attained that final goal called Kaivalya? Of course not. It doesn't mean I have attained that. I'm not yet Christ or Buddha or Shankara or Patanjali, or pick your own favorite name. Swami Rama, Swami so-and-so, whoever, Anandamaya Ma. Pick your favorite name of a person who is a symbol of that. It doesn't mean I'm that, but you know what? I got a slight, small intuition. I got a taste of what this is all about. And that's what I like about the word Kaivalya. It's liberation. Do you know where the word Kaivalya appears in the Yoga Sutras? It's in the last sutra of chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras, and it's in the last sutra of chapter 4 of the Yoga Sutras. Both of them here, I'll point it out to you just in case you haven't looked at it in a while or ever. Now, many people can pronounce Sanskrit far better than I can, so I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, and so sometimes my pronunciation is a little bit borders on atrocious, but you'll forgive me that. Here is Sutra 51 of chapter 3. Tad Vairagya Ap Dosa Bija Dosa is in there. It's actually in there.
Is dosa the road?
D-O-S-A. Ksaya Kaivalyam. The last word of chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras is Kaivalyam. And the process that has gone throughout the chapters leading up to this sutra is one of introspection, looking within, attempting to get past avidya or ignorance, learning to make the mind one-pointed, ekagra, and inspection within, and finally there is liberation and freedom. And there, the last word of that sutra is Kaivalya. This is where yoga goes. It's very common. I'm not sure that's an accurate way to say it. I was going to say it's very common for people to say that the goal of yoga is samadhi. What's far more common is that people say that the goal of yoga is having a physically fit body. Or butt, or
Booty.
Huh?
Booty.
Booty,
Like shake your booty.
Shake your booty. Thank you, Rojo. Shake your booty. That's the goal of yoga. Huh? Isn't there a sutra at the end about buddhi? Huh?
Which one were you reading? Which sutra?
Sutra number 51 of chapter 3. That's where I was. But anyway, what I was just starting to say was that in the 8 rungs of yoga, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. If somebody gets in yoga far enough to even look at the 8 rungs, it's easy to think that the goal of yoga is samadhi. Well, that's not where it ends. If you go on with those sutras there, you come to see that samadhi is actually a tool. When you take dharana, dhyana, and samadhi together, that's called samyama. And that is a very sharp, I call razor sharp attention. Why? So that we can introspect all the levels and layers of our being, all our attractions, attachments, fears, and false identities, so that we can carve them away and realize with viveka, discernment, that all of those impressions, all of those vrittis are not me. I have mistakenly think that they are related to me, and I set them aside. And the tool of doing that is samadhi. That's the usage of the word. So the end of the journey is not that meaning of the word samadhi. There's another way in which the word samadhi is used, and sometimes you encounter the phrase Kaivalya samadhi, where it's the samadhi that is Kaivalya. So this word samadhi gets used in different ways, and if it's used in, if it's used in that higher way, then yes, that's fine. I'm not being a critic of the word samadhi or the experience of samadhi, but in the context of the way Patanjali is using the word samadhi in the 8 rungs, in the Ashtanga, in those 8 rungs, it's not the final goal. It's a tool, it's an instrument. And when you follow through on what's being described, the goal of that is Kaivalya, of liberation. And so once those 8 rungs are introduced, the first 5 rungs of those 8 are introduced near the end of chapter 2 of Yoga Sutras. And it's only in the beginning of chapter 3 that those last 3 rungs, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, concentration, meditation, and samadhi, are even introduced. And then there's a lot of levels of our own being that are sort of outlined throughout chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras that you apply progressively, subtler and subtler. You progressively apply this razor-sharp attention to those objects and levels of your being so that you can set them aside as having been avidya. I thought those were related to me, and they're not. I thought they were related to consciousness or purusha, and they're not, and I set them aside. And the bottom line, to use a popular term, the bottom line of what this is all about is the last sutra of chapter 3. After you go through and you set aside all those levels and layers of false identity, what do you get? Kaivalya, which has been called absolute liberation, independence, or Maitreyi's favorite word, freedom. Free, to be free. Now, as if that's not enough, just to attempt to make sure that we don't overlook this, that's my playful way of saying it. What does Patanjali do? Repeats the word Kaivalya in the last sutra of chapter 4. This is the last sutra of the entire Yoga Sutras. The very last sutra is about Kaivalya. And I don't think I can even attempt to pronounce this. I'll say it, and you will all be forgiving. Hello, Roseanne. Nice to cook. You're cooking. Oh, you're cooking lunch, huh? Good. We'll all come over for lunch. Purusha artha sunyanam gunanam prati prasava kaivalyam svarupa pratishta va chitta shakti iti. And so sitting right in the middle of that, there is that word Kaivalya. And add here that to my way of thinking, I can tell you we absolutely, this is not a statement of disrespect, it is not. We absolutely do not have to become Sanskrit scholars. This stuff is not about intellectual study. But if we're not willing to learn some of these words, then we're missing something. And Kaivalya is one of those words. We ought to hang out with it. We ought to contemplate on it. Read what some authors have said about it in some commentaries on Yoga Sutras, some of the respectable ones. And more we gradually get, and hi Janet, gradually we get an understanding of what the words are about. And then we can use them naturally. And then you can join the club of everybody else who's sincerely trying to do these kinds of practices, and that is try to explain it to somebody else when they say to you, so what is it you're doing when you're sitting around all day? There's an old joke that I heard. You want to hear a joke? I'll tell you a joke. Want to hear it or not?
We can laugh anyway.
You can laugh anyway. At the right time, we'll just you'll know. Just laugh.
But we won't hear them, so they don't have
We won't hear, but you can write ha 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 and LOL, LOL, and
And
raffle. That's a good one. Raffle, rolling on the floor, laughing. Anyway, so here's the joke. It already feels like a bad joke, and I haven't even started. Yeah.
So much
Expectations too high sometimes.
Yeah, but no, here it comes. But that's the beauty of bad joke telling. Drum roll. She's pounding on the carpet with a drum roll. Okay, so two men bump into each other, friends, haven't seen each other in a while. How are you doing? I'm doing pretty good. Things are going well, and blah blah blah, and back and forth like that. And one friend, the one friend says to the other friend, "How's that son of yours doing? I remember that he didn't have a job before. He was just sitting around the house. And did he ever get a job?" He asks his friend, and his friend says, "Well, no, he doesn't really have a job yet, but he's not just sitting around. So what's he doing?" The father of the boy says, "Well, he's meditating." And his friend says to him, "Meditating? What's that?" The father of the boy says, "I don't know, but at least he's not just sitting around doing nothing." Bump. That was the end of the joke. Womp, womp, womp. Anyway, Matri wrote a bunch of ha's in there. Ha, 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 ha. Well, you got to laugh over this stuff. It seems to me you have to have a good sense of humor. I know Swami Rama often spoke of having somebody put lots of little smiles on there. He often spoke of, you have a better joke?
Now you have to tell it.
Now Raj has a joke.
Why do cows...
Well, come over here. Why do cows go moo?
No.
I know the answer to that one because a cow told me the joke.
Yeah, but this is not that joke.
There's Raj. Raj is going to tell a joke.
Why do cows have bells around their neck?
Because their horns weren't working.
You know it already.
We already got it. You got that one?
Dum-dum-dum-dum. Womp, womp, womp. That was a pretty bad joke, and it has nothing to do with Kaivalya or meditation.
What is raffle, M-A-O?
Rolling on the floor, laughing my ass off.
Wow.
That's Ray. I wondered if Ray was around here. I was missing Ray.
Rolling on the floor, laughing my...
LMAO.
Now, may I go back to serious?
Serious. Okay, Matri wants to get serious. The rest of us are playing.
This is just for the viewers.
For the
Our
viewers.
Sunday morning.
For people who are
Asha
actually
show.
serious about this
Yes.
stuff. Yes, okay, we're going to get serious here.
Then you said something about samadhi in relation to Kaivalya, in relation to Riya.
Well, samadhi, the thing that I was trying to comment on the context here of to compare samadhi
And I'm
with,
glad you don't
with
respond, just drink a Coca-Cola bottle.
yeah, in relation to Kaivalya, I think it's extremely important to be aware of the usage of the word samadhi in the context of the 8 rungs. And as we have seen, one of the finest places that talks about samadhi in this way is in the Tripura Rahasya, where there's a whole chapter in there that's devoted to samadhi-like states. What are you looking at?
Janet says boo to the bad jokes.
Oh, yeah.
You're getting booed on.
Well, that boo was about his joke,
No.
right?
No, it was about his joke.
No, it came before mine.
But what about my joke about, you know, the son who's not just sitting around doing anything? That was pretty cute,
It
wasn't
was Raj's joke. She just said it.
Yeah, thank you. It was for Raj's jokes. All right.
Stop saying jokes.
You better sit over there and come up with a better
If you
joke.
are with osmosis with
You better come up with a better joke. Anyway, we're serious here. This is serious business here.
Sorry.
Okay. So, anyway, I just think it's extremely useful to understand, and it's just not that hard to understand the usage of samadhi in terms of the 8 rungs. And I was saying that in the Tripura Rahasya, there's one of the chapters, one of the later chapters, talks about examples of samadhi-like awareness. And I think that's very useful. And we all already have experiences that are samadhi-like. And I like the phrase samadhi-like because then we don't have to get in debates or fights with one another of whether it is or is not samadhi and whether I have or have not experienced samadhi. If you get really absorbed in a television show that you're watching, or if you're a sport fan and your team is on the television and it's getting to a real important part of the game, they're about to, you know, win or lose. Nail biting, Raj says. There, how is that, Janet? Nail biting. You know, nail biting like this. You're into your television and your team is about to score or something.
It's the reserve time, last minutes, and it's only 2
I don't know what that is, but I don't know the
Sorry.
meaning of reserve time, 2 minutes. But that's the setting. And you're totally absorbed in that, and somebody comes in the room, or the phone rings. Somebody comes in the room and calls your name and wants to talk about whatever it is. Roseanne walks in the room and says, I'm cooking lunch. What do you want with your lunch? And what are you going to do? You know, you just don't even hear Roseanne. You don't have any thought about lunch at all. Why? Because you are in a mental state that is samadhi-like. You are completely absorbed in your television game from your team. Okay? You're reading a book and you're totally absorbed in your book. We all know this. If you have a busy, stressful day at work and you go home, whatever you do, whether you read a book or go jogging or turn on the television or play your piano, whatever it happens to be, what is it that you're doing? You're attempting to get absorbed in that other activity to help you let go of the day. Those are samadhi-like states. And so I'm not trying to, you know, lower the word samadhi and bring it down, because another usage of the word samadhi is the highest state of pure consciousness. It's another way in which the word samadhi is used. But mostly throughout the Yoga Sutras, that's not the way the word samadhi is being used. You got to look at it, you got to hang out. It's used for that kind of attention where you are deeply absorbed in a thought pattern. If you have a habit that you're trying to let go of, this may sound odd, and I'm using just a couple examples that are kind of familiar to our cultures. If you're trying to give up cigarette smoking, or you're trying to give up your mango addiction, this may sound odd, but first you break the habit, you get some distance from it. But then if you actually can sit in deep meditation on cigarettes, what will happen is that the whole reality will unravel itself. Patanjali describes this in Sutra 40-something of Chapter 1, and he or Vyasa 1 uses the example of cows. I often use the word, when I wrote about it on the article that I've written, in the book that I wrote on Yoga Sutras, I use the example apples, because most of us don't live around cows. And I've done this in a room full of people, 15, 20 people sitting there, and I'll say, would everybody please think of an apple? Say, okay, everybody got an apple? Everybody, finally, I'll go around, Paul, you got an apple? Yeah, everybody's got an apple. Say, okay, did anybody think of a red apple? And some hand goes up. Did anybody think of a green apple? Some hands go up. Did anybody think of a yellow apple? Usually not too many, but there's always somebody with a yellow apple. Who thought of a big apple? Hands go up. Who thought of a medium-sized apple? Hands go up. Who thought of a small apple? So the range of apples are there. But notice this, that it's a composite of the mantra, if you will, the mantra, the name, apple. That's the English version of that. Other languages have different words, but that's the mantra that represents that object. So whether you thought of a green one, or a red one, a large one, or a small one, you thought of the essence of appleness. And you thought of the word apple, or whatever language it is, and you thought of a particular specific kind of apple. So there's a mixture of those three going on, and that creates my reality of what an apple is. So, you know, what is a mango? And you say mango, and something comes to mind. Well, our minds have constructed these composite realities. That's what creates our attractions, aversions, and fears, is all these composites. Now, this is presented to us as foundation information in Chapter 1. It's a cookbook. It's practical information, but you got to talk about it to understand it. So then, much later on, near the end of the next chapter, we talk about viveka, discernment. Why? Because it says right there. Once it's pointed out to you and you can see it, you go, "Wow, this is right there in the book. It's right there in the sutras." It says that the reason for doing the 8 rungs is viveka, discernment. And so you apply this level of samadhi-like attention, excuse me, you apply this samadhi-like attention onto the object, and in meditation it unravels itself. And so if you're meditating on the cigarettes, then what happens is you come to this incredible insight about how you have built this composite identity around cigarettes, and that it has to do with me, and just insights come pouring through you, and you're unwrapping the package of reality that we have created. I think that I'm a man. I think that I'm a Raj. I think that I'm from Bangalore, India. I'm from this family, and all that sort of stuff. So meditate on, go into samadhi on all of the aspects that construct a Raj. And you'll come to see that every one of those things are like Big Apple or Red Apple. They're all just little phantom things that have clustered together. And each time that we do that, we do more and more nirodha, more and more setting aside of those little examples of false identities. And when we do that enough, what's the final outcome when we have set aside everything? Kaivalya. Liberation. Liberation from all of those false identities.
And so that's a temporary state in which then you can come back out, clouded back over.
Well, the clouds can switch back on, but the idea of Kaivalya, if you really pull it off well, you have some degree of pretty much constant freedom. Even when one of those kleshas, one of those samskaras pops back up because it was not completely neutralized, still there's an awareness with you that says, "Ooh, wait a minute, I just fell in the trap again."
So it's not that all the classes completely have to be removed.
It's not that all the kleshas are completely removed. They're all temporarily suspended in the highest state. And so Sankhya philosophy is the philosophical basis of yoga, as in Yoga of Patanjali. This starts to touch on one of the areas which, unfortunately, intellectuals can get in tremendous debates. We don't need to go there. This is why, it's one of the reasons that's so beautiful about the way in this tradition, as taught to us by Swami Rama, and as you and I'm looking at Matri, attempted to put together in that course we put together called Blending Yoga, Vedanta, and Tantra, there's a view that says all of these are one unified practice, and that they are not really separate, but to other people they are separated, and over here is yoga, and over there is Vedanta, and over there is Tantra. And in these various writings or attempts to describe these processes, you end up with slightly different language and slightly different ways of saying the things. And if we're open to holding it this way, we come to see, wait a minute, we're all still talking about the one same absolute non-dual reality, and there's no conflict. There's no conflict between Dvaita and Advaita. There's no conflict between dualism and non-dualism. All there is one reality, but by appearances called avidya or maya, or the dance, the lila, the play of Shakti, there is the appearance of multiplicity. So what is it we're trying to do? We're trying to use this razor-sharp attention called samyama, which includes the word samadhi, this deep absorption, so that we can introspect and discover the way in which we have constructed composite realities, including a composite reality of what defines me. And none of those definitions of me are ultimately true. So in Sankhya philosophy it says, basically this is just a lighthearted way of saying it, watch when somebody dies. If you've ever watched a person die, it's inescapable, the appearance that something just left. A moment ago, there was your friend, your family member, talking to you alive, and all of a sudden now there's a corpse. And you can't, it's dead matter. You cannot not notice that something just happened. And in the appearances, it appears that consciousness was there a few minutes ago, and now consciousness is no longer there. However you may define consciousness, or however wisely you say, look, there's consciousness, but I don't know what it is. That's why I'm exploring this stuff. So we have some appearance of consciousness and matter. And at a subtle level, the subtlest aspect of matter is called Prakriti. The subtlest aspect of consciousness is called Purusha. And what is Purusha? Pura means city, and Isha, Purusha, comes from Isha, which means that consciousness which is dwelling in the city of life out here is called Purusha. And so the idea of Kaivalya goes along with that Purusha is now free from all of its engagement with all of the manifestations of Prakriti. The last sutra of the whole thing, Sutra 34, huh? No, that's not where I was going, but it comes just, it comes after, in Sutra 32, there's 32, 33, and 34. 34 has Kaivalya. 32 talks about the gunas, the three gunas of Prakriti. And so in the final analysis, Purusha is becoming liberated from all identification with any manifestation whatsoever of the three gunas. And that's the meaning of Kaivalya. That's the meaning of liberation. Okay, so Purusha, pure consciousness, becomes absolutely free. So Samadhi is a stepping stone and a tool, an instrument, so that we can have Kaivalya. Ultimately, Kaivalya, freedom from all the levels of the gunas. And if you go back to the introductory comments in chapter 1, there is introduced Vairagya and Paravairagya, supreme non-attachment. And Paravairagya has to do with indifference or non-attachment to even the gunas. So there's a continuous thread running through all of these terms. So there's a sense of Samadhi, there's a sense of Kaivalya, and you ask about Turiya. Turiya is simply coming from a different set of descriptions that is talking about the levels of consciousness. And so we say, I'm in the waking state of consciousness right now. When I lay down, I've receded into the dreaming state of consciousness. Subtler than that is the deep sleep state of consciousness. Question: In the waking state, is there consciousness?
Yes.
Yes. Question, in the dreaming state, is there consciousness? Yes. Is there in the deep sleep state of is there consciousness? We have to kind of infer that. If we practice yoga nidra,
We'll say
from
yes.
time to time we will get a glimpse that I think there's even consciousness there in that state. And so what is the consciousness itself? So there's a consciousness that's in sleep, there's consciousness in dreaming, there's consciousness in waking. And what is that? That's called Turiya. It's simply a number. It's counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and the fourth state is Tripura. So what's the difference between Tripura and Kaivalya? If you walked through the intellectual descriptions of them, you could come up with a philosopher's argument how they're different. But in a practical sense, they're virtually the same thing.
You said Tripura, which is nice.
And I said, and Tripura. So you jump over to tantric language, and you say there's waking, dreaming, deep sleep. You know, I out here, I want to know that one that is dwelling in these three cities. Tri means three. Pura is cities. There are cities of waking, city of dreaming, city of deep sleep, like New York City. City, city, city. C-I-T-Y, not Siddi, S-I-D-D-H-I. So there's three cities. So I want to know, I want to awaken to that one that is dwelling in those three cities. Now, so again, if we want to get lost in the intellectual scholars debate, you can debate these things, as the saying goes, ad nauseum. Just get yourself sick just debating these things. Or you can sit back and see they're all very, very, very much pointing in the same direction. And when we all show up, or like this, when we all show up at the top of the mountain, then there's no confusion. Then all of the confusion and all of the questions are not answered, but they are resolved. They simply vanish because there's only one summit of the mountain. And when you get to the summit, it just, the whole thing becomes clear, and you say, wow, these are just different ways of talking about essentially the same thing.
Thank you. I was just questioning.
And so it's you know, it's good that you questioned it, but I will add here, it's a wonderful question. I think it's something that's very useful for all of us to contemplate on, and I think it's not something that gets answered one time. So I know that I don't have the ability to give a one-time answer to that question that's going to definitively answer the whole thing, and now all doubt and question is gone. You keep asking, you keep listening, you keep contemplating, you keep meditating, and then slowly over time these things get clearer and clearer and clearer. Ray Jones has just joined again. You must have lost your connection or something. Anyway.
So I just found, because we talked about samadhi-like experiences, and I know you started to satsang, so we can call them Kaivalya-like experiences where we have...
That's a new term. I never heard that, but I like it. She just said, so we could call these moments Kaivalya-like experiences. And I like that. I kind of like it. And so it's acknowledging, okay, I have not yet totally 100% realized my Buddha nature, my Christ nature, you know, my Krishna nature, whatever you want to call it. Oh, Ray's on 2 devices. Well, of course, that would be Ray. And Chandramuli, I'm going to read that. During Yoga Nidra, it has been said that we experience consciousness while we are in deepless sleep. Oops, wait a minute. I'm going to pull that down here. But how do we affirm that we were intact in deep sleep state? Does it come only upon repeated practice? Yes, basically that's the answer. That you answered your own question, which is another example of that we've already got answers within. And often, like you just did, Chandramuli, all that's happening is you're putting it out, and all you're doing is getting some confirmation from somebody else you know and have a sense of trust that says back to you, yeah, that kind of makes sense, that sounds right. It's we just have to do it over and over and over again. And it can be rather baffling. I've had people tell me I've had people get my Yoga Nidra CD and practice it every day for 6 months or a year, and finally contact me and say, we need to talk now because something just happened that has not happened. I've been playing with this thing and enjoying it for 6 months, and all of a sudden something just happened. I say, okay, well, tell me what happened. And then I'll hear the person go on and on and on, struggling to find the words to tell me what happened, and discover that they just don't have the ability to put into words what they just experienced. And what often they're trying to experience is that something like this, that for the first time in my life, I was actually conscious, but was not thinking of anything. I wasn't aware of my body, I wasn't aware of my breath, I wasn't aware of any of the aspects of my mind, I wasn't aware of any senses or cognition for the external world. There was absolutely nothing there, and yet I was awake. And when you first start experiencing that and you try to explain it to somebody else, you can't find words. And so that's how you eventually know that there's consciousness in deep sleep. You start to have glimpses of that, moments of that, and it's exciting. When I hear that from somebody, I find personally my reaction to that when I hear that from somebody is just absolutely exciting to me. I'm looking over here because I can read this easier than I can this. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Ma.
Oh, Nicholas is saying I'm all sorts of internet glitches, but he thinks it's on his end, bandwidth and stuff. So,
Yeah, well, this,
I was just saying.
I didn't even see his, I thought I saw his comment coming, but then, oh, okay, I'm having all sorts of intermittent glitches at times. Well, remember this, I mean, this is just the technology. This streaming video takes a lot of bandwidth. And so that's why we're going to upgrade our bandwidth transmitting out of here on Monday. We're going to try and hopefully that will help work a little bit better. So it's a lot of bandwidths, and so there's glitches. I find it rather amazing in a delightful way that that internet has gone to the point that we are able to do this that we're doing right now at all. This takes much more bandwidth than the go-to-meeting satsangs that we're having like 10 times a week. And a lot of you are joining us in some of those too. And so it's streaming audio, and it's streaming, but much slower, the visual of we take a book, like this afternoon at 4 o'clock we're going through the Bhagavad Gita, and so I took a Bhagavad Gita and I cut it up and scanned it and turned it into a PDF file. So when I look at that on the laptop, it transmits out through internet, but it's much, much slower bandwidth to do that than is this streaming video of my smiling face. That takes a lot more bandwidth. I think bandwidth is the correct word for that. Anyway, so Kaivalya and moksha. The word moksha, I think that was Nellie that was wrote Moshe, but not. It's usually written M-O-K-S-H-A, and I think you wrote M-O-S-H-A. And so it's talking about the same thing, only it's coming at it in a slightly different way. In the way that leads to the use of the word Kaivalya, it's talking about that there is Prakriti, there is this subtle stuff going on, and over here is consciousness or Purusha. And we're trying to separate them because the problem is that Purusha has gotten falsely entangled with all of the objects. And this is very practical out here. I have gotten me entangled with my love of cigarettes and donuts and pretty girls and mangoes and all that sort of stuff. So I'm trying to separate me as consciousness from all of those objects. I'm trying to separate me as consciousness from all of the elements of my ego structure, personality, and I'm pulling them apart so then Purusha can stand alone, and that's called Kaivalya. When we look at it through different eyes, we say we're looking at the same world, the same reality, and we say there's one absolute non-dual reality that we can call Brahman, and the individualized wave that's in the ocean of bliss is called Atman. And the Atman, that pure consciousness that is me, is only appears to be a me because of Maya, or the veil of, sometimes in English is called the veil of illusion, or simply appearances. And so moksha is just a way of saying, I am free from all of the Maya, all of the illusion of these many, many layers and levels of who I incorrectly think I am. This is a good metaphor for the layers of the onion. It talks about it like the layers of the onion. We have koshas. You know, we have Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manamaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, Anandamaya kosha, and at the core of that onion is called Atman, or capital S self. So it's talking about the same thing, only it's kind of approaching it from a slightly different way. So the word for that then that gets used is moksha. If we look at it through the eyes of Tantra, we say there's two things going on, masculine and feminine, Shiva and Shakti. The example I usually use from that is I'll just take a pen. I've done this online in some of our satsangs before, a piece of paper, and just write down with the pen. I'll say, what do you see? We say, well, I see a pen. Well, what's inside of the pen? Ink. Okay, watch this. I'll draw a little square, and I'll say, what do you see? So I see a square. I'll draw a circle. I say, what do you see? Say, I see a circle. I'll draw a little three-sided thing. What do you see? I see a triangle. And I say, why is it that you don't just say, I see ink, and I see ink, and I see ink? We see a square, we see a circle, we see a triangle. And yet, at the same time, it's all ink. The beauty of it is that the dance, it's called Shakti because of the potency of the creative force. The ink can appear to be a triangle. The ink can appear to be a circle or a square, yet at the same time, it's always ink. So notice that we're talking about exactly the same conversation, just we're going at it a slightly different way. So it looks a little bit different. It's essentially not different, but this is the view through the eyes of Tantra, where Shiva and Shakti are one and the same. I was sitting with Swami Rama one time in one of those most intimate of personal conversations, and he gave me an instruction that said Shiva and Shakti are one and the same. And I left that conversation. It troubled me for months, if not a couple years, because of wondering, why did he tell me that then? Because I've already heard that philosophy. It's in the books. I've heard people give lectures on Shiva and Shakti. I knew this information. And it finally, over a long time of doing the practices, I came to realize that it was a setup comment. He had really set me up. He told me that, knowing that I already knew the information, but what he wanted me to do was to pursue it and discover it for myself, that it's true. It was instruction on sadhana, huh? It was a diksha of sorts. It was an initiation of sorts. It was an initiation into that principle. And now go out and experience it in the world. And so I can end up with a pen and a paper drawing little symbols and images there. And so you can call it moksha, or you can say, I'm following all the evolutes of Shakti back to Shiva, where Shiva and Shakti are one and the same. And then when you do that, you discover that, wow, a lot of the things I've seen through my whole life maybe had a different meaning. A short version of this story is I came to start reading the Bible. I've never been a religionist in the Western. I've never been a religious. I was never any of the Abrahamic religions. None of that ever made any sense to me. But I decided, well, I should read this stuff just so I can, if I'm going to be a critic of it, I should at least have some idea what I'm talking about. Well, I was reading in the Bible, and the first time the word Eve, in the story of Adam and Eve, the first time the word Eve showed up in this particular Bible, there was a footnote down to the bottom of the page, and it explained that this word Eve meant or came from living. And then there was the word Adam, and there was a footnote to the bottom page, and it came from some root that meant essentially ground. And so when you put Adam and Eve together, and you read, and all you got to do is read to the bottom of the page the footnotes. It's right there. I just never noticed it. I never knew this. Nobody ever explained it to me. And so there we've got living ground. Living ground. That sounds exactly like Shakti and Shiva. Shiva is the ground. Shiva is the ink.
And then Shakti.
The Shakti is the feminine. Why would philosophers set up this way of thinking? Because in nature, it's just obvious, is it not? It's the feminine side of all species. It's the feminine side that gives birth. There may be exceptions to that, where they have two genders in one being. But so naturally, you would say there's ground and there's that, and then and in that Bible, they screw the story up, and we end up with all this. What's the big word for bias? Not bias. Dogma, not dogma. When you are really against other people, you are a racist.
Or fanatic, or
There's another word I'm looking for in it. What is it that is called the category word for abuse of women?
misogynist.
No, there's another simpler word that's very much in common language, and it's just not coming to me right now. So by misunderstanding this principle, we end up with this patriarchal cultures with men on top and of the social structure and women being abused. And there's still a word, it'll come to me later that I'm not,
Patriarchy.
No, that was a substitute word for whatever the word was I was thinking of. And so when we hold this in this other way, the metaphor that's in that Bible, and I'm not a religionist, but it's that woman was made from the rib of man, and it sounds like a real derogatory term. Like God, this being called God, took a rib out of man and manufactured a woman just for the pleasures of the man. And then we ended up with all this cultural negativity of not listening to the beauty of the natural wisdom that women have. Misogyny was not misogyny. There's a much simpler word that's in common language. I'm just not remembering. When you are living bias against a category of people, misogyny is no. I just don't know. But so it doesn't matter. But anyway, when you look at it another way, then that metaphor is a beautiful metaphor, because it's acknowledging that creativity comes out of the feminine. And so without that creativity, the first verse of the Saundarya Lahari, which is all about Tripura, says essentially that without Shakti, Shiva is a corpse, is immovable. Nothing happens. Just nothing happens. Nothing stirs at all. In terms of the ink metaphor, you've got one of the things I've done. I've been in some art stores. I'm not an artist, but one of the things in art stores that I find just absolutely beautiful is these rows of little tubes of colored paint. And there's just, hundreds of different colors of paint. And I like just looking at all of those colors. What it requires, though, is an artist to take all those little tubes and mush it around with a brush, and you end up with this beautiful painting. And so the art is the feminine. Those tubes of paint have their own kind of beauty, but they're nothing if you don't squish it out and put it on the brush and paint the painting. So the feminine is beautiful. And so then if we see it that way, even this metaphor of feminine coming out of the rib of man, I'm still not terribly fond of the metaphor, but it makes sense. And what's it talking about? That there's one absolute non-dual reality, and it appears to be playing out through a symbolic story of Adam and Eve that is none other than Shiva and Shakti. And it's talking about the same one non-dual reality as when we say it's all Brahman and appearing to be multiplicity, due to the potency of Maya, or illusion, or appearances, which is the same as saying that Purusha is now standing aside, separate from all of its entanglement with all the manifestations of Prakriti. So these things are not in conflict with one another. They are not different, if I can use the word, they are not different religions. They're different ways of approaching the same one reality. And so are they essentially different, or are they essentially the same? And I'm trying to pitch the idea that they are essentially the same. Nicholas says, yes, this is a great technology. Oh, talking about, yes. Yeah, agreed. So, anyway, Kaivalya is just simply one of those words. And I don't know why exactly. I could put some thought to it. But I sort of feel an affection towards the word Kaivalya. I quite like the word. I quite like the word moksha as well, but it has a different feel to it. I have an affection for Kaivalya because Kaivalya is liberation from. Liberation from what? I look at the world around us, and all you got to do is just look at any version of the daily news, and we as a humanity, we just keep killing each other. We have wars, large wars, we have murderers, we have absolutely outrageous ego trips amongst world leaders trying to do this and that to their enemies, and it's just tremendously chaotic, this world out here. And so there's something that's very tangible about the idea of coming to your meditation seat or walking in the front door of our little place here. And a fellow showed up yesterday who we had not seen in several years, 4 or 5 years, and lives in another state, was driving through and wanted to come in just to say hello briefly and to sit in the meditation room. And so what do? We come and we go sit in a quiet place. What is it that we're doing? In some sense, what we're doing every time we're doing that is we are attempting to do Nirodha, Yogashchitta Vritti Nirodha. And what are we attempting to do? Same statement, slightly different use of words. I'm attempting to have a momentary liberation from all the crap of the world and all the noise of my mind. And it's a taste, what?
A Kaivalya-like experience.
It's a Kaivalya-like experience. It may not be the Buddha thing and all that kind of stuff, but it's in the right direction, and we can get up from a simple meditation like that if we allow ourselves, if we give ourselves permission to say, I just did this. I just did this even for a couple minutes. I actually was able to shed off all of the noise of my daily life and all of my concerns about my bank account and my future and the state of the world and all of that stuff. I was able to set it aside temporarily, and I think that just from this one meditation of these few minutes, I think I have a greater understanding of why I'm doing this whole thing, and that it has something to do with this wonderful word Kaivalya. I think that I'm going to do this again. I think I'm looking forward to my next meditation. I think that I'm going to do this again later today or tomorrow. So if you do that in the evening and you have that moment like that, you say, boy, I think I need to go get some really good sleep now because I want to get up early in the morning so I can do this again.
Joe Moreau posted a nice verse.
The Yoga Tattva Upanishad says Kaivalya is the very nature of the self, the supreme state, Parampadam. It is without parts and is stainless. It is the direct intuition of the real existence, intelligence, and bliss. It is destruction, recognition, and experience. This is called knowledge. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. And so we do like that, what Joe just put. We take these words like this and we keep looking at stuff, we keep listening, we keep having conversations, and there's more and more moments where something makes even more sense than it did before. And we get little glimpses of the value of all this stuff, and we get little glimpses of where we are headed. We get glimpses about the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain may be covered in clouds. It's one of the things I have enjoyed a lot about the time that I've been able to spend around the Himalayas. you see all of those massive clouds covering the mountains, and then all of a sudden you see a peak, a 20,000-foot peak sticking out of a mountain. It's like, oh, that's right, that's what this is about. There is a mountain peak called Kaivalya, or call it Moksha, or call it Shiva. I don't care what you call it. Call it God if you want. I don't care what you call it, but there's something to it. And one of the fun words is Kaivalya. Okay? Do you think, there's something there, do you think our meditations can also help settle the collective consciousness? I think it has an effect, Janet, but and this is just, I'm going to respond to that a little more, and it's just a personal opinion. I think that maybe it's nice that, you know, people will have a thing and say, let's have an international meditation moment where we're all going to pray for peace or something like that. And I think, okay, that's a nice thing to do. But more important than that is just Janet sitting in Janet's house doing it just because here it is to be done. And then being aware that, okay, as a side effect of this, maybe this has an effect on the collective consciousness of humanity. But not necessarily going into, I'm going to do my meditation so that I can change the world. That can be like, I'm going to do my meditation so I can change my spouse. Or I'm going to control the life of my children. How many parents have discovered that that doesn't really work in the long run?
But a calm wave in the middle of the ocean.
But a calm wave in the middle of the ocean, and that kind of metaphor. Then there is an effect. So I think that's very true, Janet. At least I, as me, as a personality-based person, I like to think that there's something to it. And so we just keep doing it. So we've got our little meditation room. Come over here one of these days, come over and visit and come sit in the meditation room. So we've created this little bitty space called our meditation room inside of our relatively little bitty ashram. And we can just come and sit there and be quiet. And maybe it has a little bit of effect. I hope so. And if it doesn't change the world, and it doesn't change this community, it doesn't change this country, at least it's serving a few people who come and sit in the room together and have lunch together and come together like we are right now and have satsang. And so this went pretty long here. I didn't mean for this to go quite so long. I hope it was a pleasant thing. If we could get more people meditating. Yeah, if we could get more people meditating. Many people have said that. But look at what each of the religions have said. If only we could get everybody to be a follower of my religion, then we would have unity. Why would we have that and we'd have peace? Because we would have eliminated everybody else. I mean, I know that's not the intent of what we're saying, if we can get everybody to meditate. But it can accidentally, I think, end up with that kind of effect. So, if we could get everybody to awaken, it's one of the things that I enjoy. Personally, I enjoy when I run into a person who comes from a completely different culture and a completely different religious backgrounds, and they're wanting to learn something about this process. And you and we may call it meditation, but one of the things I enjoy about it is attempting to have the conversations in the context of their own tradition. It's one of the reasons that I've learned a little bit about Christianity is from trying to be of use to other people. One of the big shocks I had was when a Catholic priest came to me and wanted to learn meditation. And it was a challenge, and I did a good job trying to help this fella. But it meant I had to sort of dig, huh?
Pretty cool.
It was cool. I had to dig deep to be able to find out, but I insisted to myself, I have to find a way to talk to this man, at least to some extent, in the context of his own background. And I'm not a Catholic priest, so but it can be done, and it was very cool, and it helped him tremendously, and he was very grateful. The man was so grateful to me that he gave me my own private Mass. Mass is the name of the Catholic ceremony that they do, and it's against the rules. You're not supposed to give a non-Catholic Mass. It's a no-no. It's not permitted. And I not only got to go to Mass, I got to do it alone with him. And maybe that's why I did it alone, so he wouldn't get caught. I don't know. But it was a tremendously heartwarming experience. Anyway, so thank you all for playing Kaivalya. And if you want, after this is up there and want to make some comments, I'll respond to any comment that you want me to respond to. Matri likes to respond to those. So if you want to have some more conversation, we can do it. And yeah, it's a good story. Well, yeah, it was a fascinating experience, and I've had a number of those kind of experiences. There is another Protestant minister who is probably going to be coming and spending a week with us very soon, within the next few weeks, and I'm looking forward to that, and wants to learn about meditation. Going to come and stay with us for a week. Anyway, so I enjoy the diversity, and so if we can get everybody to meditate, I think that would be great. And but I don't know. Anyway, Kaivalya. So, thank you for playing. Thank you for visiting. And remember, Om Tat Sat. Om is where the action is. It's all in Om. Om Tat Sat. Om is the happening place. Om is where it's at. Thank you for playing, Janet. Come visit sometime. Okay. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Tat Sat. Om. Okay, I know. Okay, good. Good, Janet. Okay, bye-bye. Anybody want to say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Om Tat Sat.